Welcome back to the Becoming Her podcast. You guys, Dr. Ann and I are back for another great, I always say fire, but maybe that's just my signature line and I just need to own it. Sometimes I feel
Yes.
lame for being repetitive, but I have these sayings and people are like, Nicole, you're in my head when I'm working out. If I'm not lifting heavy shit or that toned banging body. So I have these like signature sayings. So I'm just going to start owning them. So we're back
Yes.
for another fire episode. That's what we're going to say. It's funny because you guys, you would think that we would have a bit more framework when it comes to these podcasts, but a lot of times these episodes are just so off the cuff of this is what we're feeling like talking about today. This is what we're seeing happening within, whether it be conversations I'm having or conversations that Anne is having with those that she works with directly. And so I had texted her this morning. I'm like, what are you feeling extra spicy about? What are you feeling passionate about today? And so we're going to be talking about, and it's funny because I had just created a TikTok talking about this exact same concept, like, I don't know, 3 days ago. So when you said that, I'm like, perfect. This is something that I know every single person listening to this is going to resonate with. And so I titled this How You'll Never Outperform Your Self-Image, How Thoughts Either Keep You Prisoner or They Set You Free. And
Oh,
this is something where our mindset, I think sometimes a lot of people look at it as maybe the woo-woo side of things. And
hmm
it is quite literally one of those things that you will, like you said, you'll just never outperform it. And the reality is you're never going to be able to diet a brain who thinks that you're worthless in the way of which how you speak to yourself. So I know a lot of women think that they need more discipline or a better plan or the perfect week to finally lose the weight. And what they really need is a new identity. So, Anne, I'm going to let you kick us off here because this is, again, I know your wheelhouse, something I'm very passionate about, but pop off, sister, pop off.
yeah. Well, I've already had this discussion. They're generally in therapy. I call them themes for the week. And when there are themes for the week that you just like, it lets me know that the universe is just like needing something different right now. And so a lot of the theme for this week is the way that we speak to ourselves.
Mhm.
And I hear people talk about this in multiple arenas. It could be in relationship to addiction. It could be in relation to weight loss, food, what's happening to their bodies. That's too much hard work. I have no willpower. I can't do things like that. Or the must be nice to be thin. You're only saying that because you're thin, or you're only saying that because you're fit. And so there's a lot of, it doesn't matter what I do, it will never be good enough and I'll never get it, or I'll never get it right. And the reason why I get so fired up about this is because when we speak something over ourselves, I call it speaking death over ourselves. So that when we're speaking something like that over ourselves, what we are doing is we're actually engaging multiple regions of the brain to process that information. And we say these things in passing, but the problem is that when we engage with these thoughts and we actually speak them out to other people, what we are telling the brain is that we are done fixing the problem. We are done solving the problem because I'm broken. I'm don't have the genetics somebody else does. I'm never going to be good enough. You're right. I'm just trapped in binging for the rest of my life, and that's just how it's going to be. And my mom struggled with it. My grandmother struggled with it. Or these are just our body types. That is one of my favorite ones. This is just my body type. This is just how it has to look.
This is what I'm destined
It's
for.
just how I have to look. Yes, it's predestined. I'm just going to look like this. And so what's interesting about this is that there's a lot of extra steps that come after that. So it's not just simply this is my body type and this is how everybody in my family looks, but also this is my body type. Everybody in my family looks like this. Therefore, I'm not going to try. Therefore, anything that I do is going to end result in me looking like this anyway. Therefore, I'm going to do whatever the heck I want to do with exercise, with eating, with managing my life, because I'm predetermined for this, right? Therefore, this is just inevitable and I'm going to feel hopeless and helpless. So I'm going to give up and I'm going to quote unquote enjoy life.
Hmm.
And we embrace enjoying life and doing, and really when we're embracing this concept of enjoying life, what we're actually saying is I'm going to do whatever the heck I want to do whenever I want to do it. When it comes to food, when it comes to exercise. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. If you were at work and that is the philosophy that you had at work, I'm going to do whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it, whenever I feel like it.
How's
Okay.
that going to pan out for you?
Nicole's
Let me
laughing.
know.
There's a lot.
I'm curious.
Nicole, I know that we have a lot of discussions where like I'm doing a lot of stuff that I don't always want to do. You're not going to have a job for very long, or at a bare minimum, you're not going to be performing well at your work, and you're probably going to be angry or paranoid of your boss or your coworkers, are going to get really resentful and bitter, right? Because if we lived every single day in every arena of our life doing whatever the heck we wanted to do, one, we have no self-discipline. Two, we're probably not doing the things that we don't want to do, that need to be done, that actually create that self-discipline, but also create self-respect, right? So when we do the hard stuff, when we show up and we eat the way that we need to, we go to the gym when we don't want to. And I'm not talking about every time, I'm talking about 100% of the time. Because there are days that we don't go to the gym, and it's important for us to miss those days, right? Because we're sick or we're really exhausted or we're needing a break. But 90% of the time, if we're doing it, 90% of the time we're showing up, what happens is that we cultivate not just this work ethic, but we cultivate in our brain an ability to say yes to the hard, right? And what we're saying is, I'm not going to settle for other people's limits. And other people's limits might be mom, and it might be grandma, it might be great grandma. But what I mean, and I already can hear people on the other end of this saying, but I do have my mom's body. This is just her body type. Yes, it might be your body type, but that doesn't mean that you get to do whatever you want to do and expect to be in a different place. And if you presume already that you're going to be in that place no matter what, and you might as well just accept defeat, then you aren't actually showing up for your own life. You are showing up in the exact same pattern that people in generations before you showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get exactly what they got.
1,000%. 1,000%.
And while we may not be able to change genetics for sure, and we may not be able to change some things, we can change how much we respect ourselves. We can change what we see when we look in the mirror. And I don't mean that you're going to have a supermodel's body at the end of this journey, but what we see in the mirror in terms of even how I respect myself, and then how that is displayed on our body. Because what our bodies communicate to other people, before people come into my office, and before I even say who I am and what it is that I do and talk to them about therapy, they see me as a package. And we make up determinations about other people based upon what we see.
Mm.
You know that we do this,
Yes,
right?
we do. I have so many thoughts around this part of it, but that's a whole different podcast for another day. But
that is
we'll
right.
continue on this path.
and I once was stopped just out with my mom and one of my kids. I was stopped just in the middle of summer out in a tank top, and somebody said, "Wow, I can tell that you're really disciplined." And it went on to talk, and and that kind of stuff. But the reason I'm saying that is that who we are on the outside is a big advertisement about what it is that we stand for on the inside. And so if we are standing for whatever I want to do and whatever works, and I'm not judging you if that's where you're at. I'm not saying that you are a horrible person. What I'm saying is that, are you okay with that limit? So let me talk about the really cool part about this that not a lot of us realize. When we speak out loud this death, 5 regions of the brain are responsible for processing this information. Now, when we have these thoughts in our head, that uses the prefrontal cortex. So thinking like, I'm not good enough, or I'm never going to get this, or this is just going to be too hard for me to do, that's all stuck in the prefrontal cortex. Okay. But when we learn how to reframe that and how to refute those messages, and we say it out loud, as an example, this is going to be really hard. But then we say out loud, that's okay because I'm really resilient and I can do hard stuff.
Mm.
What happens is 5 different regions of the brain then have to process that positive talk. The specific regions, by the way, are the prefrontal cortex, the Wernicke's area, Broca's area, the motor cortex, and the auditory cortex. So parts of the brain responsible for language, speech, hearing, thoughts, and then speech development, right? So what's really phenomenal about that, if you think about just one region of the brain processing this information, sometimes I hear people say, well, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what I'm supposed to say. Okay, but you're not doing it, or you're doing it just stuck in here. We say it out loud. What happens is that we're processing at a significantly greater speed because more regions of the brain are responsible for that.
Mm. So
Now,
go ahead.
So, yeah, I wanted to add something to this because I heard somebody go, okay, this makes a lot of sense, but then how do I take this home with me? And I said, okay, so tell me more about that. And they said, well, like, this is just what I do. This is how I say things. And I'm like, yes, because what happens in mental health is no different than what happens in our body. You can go to the gym and have a session with a trainer once. You're going to get some amazing insight and some really good information. But that one time, what is the impact that one time is going to have on your life?
On your life or on your body?
On your life, on your body. on your life and your body one time.
Yeah, you're not going to see it right away in your body, but can have a major impact on your like the way of which you view things. I think sometimes just like an interaction like that can shift that for sure. But yeah, you're not going to see it on your body, of course.
That's right. Only if you do what? What has to happen in order for you to have that experience, that one time experience, for it to make a difference long term?
You have to be consistent. You have to be repetitive.
That's right. You have to be repetitive. Okay. Our minds are no different. We're very simple creatures. So if I say once to myself, I can do hard things, I can figure this out, even though I've never been able to figure this out before, I can figure it out because I'm committed to it. Okay. And I say that once, my brain got one episode of benefit. That's it.
Mhm.
Okay. And then all the other times they go, yeah, this is too hard. I don't like doing hard things. And this is just how my life is going to be. And the power doesn't lie in the fact that that is our default setting. That's where we want to go. What the power lies is actually being able to identify that's what I say to myself. And then in that moment, when you realize I'm doing it again, I'm speaking this death over myself, we say out loud the opposite
Mm.
every single time you come to it, or every single time. And there might be moments that you're like, I don't want to do this. Okay, fine. But if we can crack it even 50% of the time, you're going to have a much greater impact on your ability to change than if we only do it once, twice, or just every now and then, or when we show up in the therapist office, which is often the case.
Yeah. So I read a statistic and I love for because this bleeds into this, which was the statistic was just fascinating to me. But we know the majority of our behavior is subconscious. I read something like 95% of our behavior is subconscious. But I read a statistic following that that said the average the average person has 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day.
Yes.
And 80 to 90% of those thoughts are negative and repetitive, which
Yes.
blew my mind. I mean, just the fact that you're having 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day. But again, you guys, 80 to 90% of those thoughts are negative, limiting beliefs that you're repeating. So therefore, you know what I mean? That repetition is what your brain believes. And so I would love for you to dive into that because I mean, that blew my mind. That blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, and I think I was thinking as you were talking about this, back to the gym, as you were mentioning this, I actually thought of a great example. The very first time that I went to the gym, and on my training sheet, I saw a barbell, and I saw like doing like a deadlift, and I was like, I can't do that. I don't what? I don't even like.
You want me to do
I've
what?
never. I that's what like the big people do. That's what like the body and the men. I see them doing that. I can't. I'm not like I'm just a middle aged lady with like grandkids, for crying out loud. I can't do that. And and what's really challenging about that for me is that that's what I reflected when I went down and did that first squat. I put way too much weight on it, and sure enough, I was like, I can't do this. Literally, physically couldn't do it. And then I took all the weight off, and I did it was just the barbell itself, and I could do it. But it takes us being able to recognize that that is the space that we're in the space of saying, I can't do it, which is often I won't do it. And that's what I encourage people to think about is challenging and changing that word. Instead of saying I can't do it, I won't do it. And the reason why that's important is because the second that you say I won't do it, you're actually challenging that cognitive distortion that it's something inherent to you that you're incapable.
And I tell my clients often, I'm like, the belief is going to come after the evidence. So many times you don't have to believe you can do something to actually do it. And you know, that is, it shows up and it manifests specifically in your health and fitness journey. If you would have asked me, hell, 5 years ago, if I'd be in the position that I am today, leading a team and, you know, confident in my body and doing the things that I'm doing, I would have laughed in your face. I would have laughed in your face. And so that belief, again, I would say you have to be like, you know, you just have to be like 51% there. You don't have to 100% believe that you can do the thing, but 51% there. And then the confidence doesn't necessarily come from executing the thing perfectly. The confidence comes from continuing to show up for yourself. And so I had to rewire my identity when I started my journey. I was no longer the girl that needed to lose weight. I was the girl that continued to show up for herself. And that's how it started for me. I literally had to start with small rewirings that way because I had gotten to a place where I just didn't believe that I could do it long term. Like I could get the weight off really quickly. I couldn't keep the weight off. And so that shift for me started from, okay, I'm no longer the girl that's just trying to lose weight. I'm the girl that's proving to herself that she can continue to show up and keep the commitments she made to herself. And so it started with small reframes. I
Huh?
see you shaking your head, so I'd love for you to speak to that.
Well, yes. So those small reframes, and sometimes not knowing how to do something is the problem, right? So, but the ability to show up and look for the small wins and the tiny ways that we can do something. So, as an example, you might look at the specific movement in the gym and go, "Ooh, that's really intimidating. I believe that I have a capacity to get there, but I'm not ready to do it yet."
Mm.
Even that, shifting that to that I'm not ready to do it yet. All right. We are expressing hope in our ability to do it. We're expressing an understanding that we need to do it. And we're identifying that we have all the capacity capable. We're just not yet in that spot. And that's totally fine and reasonable. There are days that I go to the gym and I get a new thing on and I'm not, no, I'm gonna grab the kettlebells or I'm just I'll good. I'll get it next time. just it's fine. It's fine. My coach will be fine. I'll be fine. I'll
That's
get the
fine.
workout.
We're all fine.
And so moving, and I think what happens to so many people is we do those things and we're like, well, I can't, I don't know, I don't want to do this and I can't do it right now. And so I'm a failure and I'm never going to get this because I can't do this thing. And we shame spiral. And noticing that trend that we have to shame spiral, noticing that tendency we have to want to avoid the hard, want to avoid the challenges. But if we can work on shifting ever so slightly how we talk to ourselves when we're in
Mm.
challenge, when in a challenge state, we can actually begin to shape the brain, and not just the wiring of the brain, but the wiring of the brain for challenge. So if the map that I get is that's too much, like that feels really overwhelming, that's an emotional state. All right. And therefore I'm incapable of doing it. So I'm not going to do it. Okay. We've got a really tiny map
Mm.
in terms of coping, right? Okay. If I go to something and you go, man, that's really overwhelming. And I've never done that before. I don't even know how to do it. I realize I want to do it. And I don't know yet, how, but I'm going to come back to this. And this is really important. I'm not going to come back to it tomorrow. I'm going to figure out what piece of this I can do today, what piece of this I can bring today into this. Kind of like my barbell example, right? It's too much weight to just the barbell itself. There we go. There's a humbling moment in the gym.
For sure. And it's like that voice in your head is either it's a coach or it's a critic kind of thing, right? And so if you continue to tell yourself, I can't do, I'm not worthy, I'm just destined to be overweight, this is my body type, it's my genetics, it's whatever you continue to repeat consistently throughout the day, and just when these limiting beliefs come up, then your brain looks for ways to prove that. Your brain
Yes.
wants to support that voice.
Yes.
So if we can just slightly, like Anne said, reframe that, it's like, okay, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm the person that continues to work on myself. Or
Yes.
just those small reframes is so powerful. How do you get people? Because I work with a lot of women, and a lot of them take this on as being very woo, right? Like they just miss, it's like, how do we enforce how powerful this is and just the small tweaks? Because again, a lot of people are like, and the mindset piece of it is it's hard, right? Because you can't hold it. There's nothing tactical. You can't hold that piece. And so when you can't see it and you can't hold it, it's just really hard to put value behind it. And so how would you start with somebody who's brand new into your office that you're trying to start to get them to rewire and rethink in that way?
Well, okay. Those of us that are parents may not like this one, but a lot of that internal critic is what we got as messages, either implied or directly from our childhoods, and oftentimes that our parents or coaches or teachers around us. You can't do that. You're not capable of this. You need to do it my way. And the reason that I bring that up is that it's important to acknowledge that that internal critic is not us, which sounds really weird and very, again, right? Um, but the challenge with it is oftentimes what I see is that people embrace shame as a motivation strategy. In
Mm.
other words, the only way that I have people that come into my office for even trauma work, and they'll say to me, don't give me that face. And it's a face of empathy or compassion or sadness about something that they've experienced. And they say, I don't know what to do with that face. They are so unfamiliar with compassion when they're in pain that it creates discomfort for them. And I see the same things when I actually speak something positive over them, like you're resilient or you're hardworking or you're smart or you're kind. And they don't know what to do with compliments because they aren't accustomed to receiving. And so part of this belief structure that we have is that we are more motivated by shame than we are with encouragement. Now, if that actually holds true, I'm going to challenge you on this. All right. If that holds true, I want you to see how you talk to your friends when they are discouraged or struggling with something. Because if your friend says, I can't do this, this is too much, I just am a failure, I suck at this, I'm an awful mom, I'm an awful dad, like whatever it is that they're saying, and you respond back with, you're right, you suck, you should have done that better. What were you thinking? Right? If you're doing that out loud just over people, you probably don't have a lot of friends.
Yep. And it's always a powerful connection when you think about it that way. It's like, would you ever talk to your daughter or your
Yes.
mom or your best friend or your employer or anybody, your partner, the way that you speak to yourself with the, again, we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And if you just, if you're internalizing this, how many of those thoughts are just negative towards yourself and really harsh and not, and just, I just think back to that space of my journey and the way I would belittle myself. It literally makes me cringe thinking about it. It makes me cringe. But I know that this is so common for a lot of women. And it's because, like you said, it feels very uncomfortable to get paid a compliment. It feels very uncomfortable to own your worth. It feels very uncomfortable to, sit in everything that you are instead of hyperfixating on everything that you're not. And this is that identity shift that it's still I mean I struggle with. I mean, I don't think you ever totally get there, right? It's continues to evolve and you have to continue to work towards it, but that is right then and there. That was the biggest shift I made on my journey, 1,000%. And every single time what I did when I started realizing I was having these like just super intrusive thoughts is I would literally pinch myself. I would pinch myself hard, and I would make it sting and hurt. So I'd have to physically feel the negative effects of what my brain was saying. And I know that that sounds ridiculous, but I mean, I would pinch myself and I ended up with like little bruises on my arms and stuff from it, but it helped. It's serious. It helped. So
You created your own aversion therapy. That's what you did. So the brain is the brain is responsible for pattern recognition because it wants to help us survive. And so what you did is you paired something that was occurring automatically behind the scenes without interruption with something that was really painful. So the brain then associates the negativity and the negative self-talk with pain. And
mm.
it creates it creates this dissonance towards wanting to engage in that thought pattern.
That makes sense. I wasn't sure if it was healthy or not, but it worked. Took about a
Yeah.
month or so of like, like lots of like little bruises up and down my arm, but it worked. I mean, it definitely, I obviously caught myself a lot more because again, how many of these thoughts do you have and you don't even realize you're having these thoughts and they're just running
Yes.
subconsciously through your head?
And how many times do we allow our children or even our friends sometimes to speak badly about ourselves and we get kind of flummoxed with what to say? One of the greatest strategies that I've ever used was with my own daughter when she would go into these shame spirals and just say, well, I can't do anything. I'm stupid. I like, this is just this is too much for me. I'm never going to figure this out. I'm just going to fail this. And I would look at her and I would say, you aren't going to talk about my daughter like that. She is strong and brave and resilient and has done more hard stuff than I have seen most young women do her entire life. And I am not going to stand for this. And she would kind of like smile and laugh. She like, Mom, this is so weird to do that. And I'd be like, but it would stop the flow of conversation,
Mm,
right? And think about if we had that, right? What we believe is actually promoting us forward, this really shaming, nasty inner critic that we confabulate with ambition. It actually doesn't drive us correctly because all it does is it drives us for hustling and feeling like we're never good enough because we can always find something to criticize. We can always find something to do that we weren't perfect on or could have tweaked ever so slightly. And the problem is that if we're always looking for the bad, we have now what's called a negativity bias, meaning I'm looking for bad. And so it doesn't matter if I did 90% of this well, I'm going to spot the 10% I failed at and I'm going to maximize that.
yep.
And I see this in couples counseling. We get around to, like, so I do lots of work in terms of attachment and couples work. And I'll say like, okay, well, your partner's feeling constantly criticized by you. And that is their perception. How often are you actually saying, good job, or I really appreciate that, or I feel really loved? And when asked about it, usually the partner's completely blank. They're like, I don't know. Like, well, what do you like that they do? Complete silence.
Mm.
What do you love about them? And then they're able to give me some. But I'm like, man, if you're spending all of your time looking at your partner's faults and all the things that it is that they do that and never the things that they positively do, it kind of makes sense why they're feeling criticized because you're criticizing them.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there are valid reasons, and I like please don't
Yeah.
come at me on that one. I get it. And I get that it's more complex than just being, critical. Sometimes we have partners that don't listen to us. I understand that. And we get really frustrated with that. But if we struggle with this internally and we think that that is successful, the problem is that we're actually cultivating our own negativity for our own imperfections and mistakes in the hopes that we are going to correct it and finally be successful human beings. What I want to say to you, just right now, listen to me. Is that working for you?
Yep. My signature line. How's that working? How is that working for you? Tell me. I'm curious.
And you might say, well, it got me through school, or I did really like I got through my career. Yeah, but are you burned out? Are you angry? Are you depressed? You feel like you're never good enough? It didn't work. Like, yes, behavior wise, you hustled really well to feel like you were finally good enough, but it's not working for you because you're burned out. And it's not working for you because it doesn't feel right. And so when I hear a lot of
Okay. Are you there, Ann?
you believe
This is
that,
live feed, your internet or your sound cut off.
oh
This is,
no,
yeah, this is part of when we say, hopefully it was, maybe it's mine, but I don't know if maybe
it
try
probably
switching
is
your
not.
Wi-Fi. What? No, is it? Okay. Well, you guys, like how I always said that it's like you're sitting in the living room with us. We don't edit the podcast, is what I'm saying. So you're going to get a little of the technical glitches here.
Yeah. So sorry, guys.
Live off the cuff.
No kidding. We'll have to figure out the Wi-Fi stuff. So I think that the power though is being able to really focus on what it is that we're focusing on. And if you're only focusing on what you believe is the 90% of the time that you're messing up, then you're going to reinforce the mess ups instead of the successes.
Mm,
And we're going to speak that over ourselves. And if we can do it out loud, if we can actually, even if it's just 10% of the time, even if it's just 20% of the time, you're like, man, I did a great job with that one little piece. I'm practicing this with my sons after jujitsu. They come in the car and they're sparring each other, so they're both frustrated with each other. And it's like, you did this, and you almost choked me out. I almost died, and it's like this whole thing. And so they get into the car now, and I'll stop them really quickly when they're doing this. And now they've gotten accustomed to it. I say, what's one thing that you like that the other one did?
mm,
And I'll tell you, within 3 weeks, it has been make or break on those two young men and how they come in.
I love that.
And then I'll say, what's one thing that you like? What's one thing that you like that the other person did? What's one thing that you like? Okay. And after we do that, then we can talk about all the complaints we have.
Mm, yep. I love that.
And they get so wrapped up in the positive stuff that we oftentimes don't even get to
Negative stuff. That
unless
shift,
it was
that's huge.
unless it was real big. Like,
That's huge. So, what would you say? You have somebody that comes into your office, and we are starting to identify and recognize the negative self talk and how much it really is holding us back. And we're starting to reframe and we're starting to make these small reframes. What's the next step after that? Like, is there a pattern or a process that you would have someone follow? It's like, okay, I know that the way I talk to myself matters. I know I need to start to make these shifts in and around how I talk to myself. I'm going to make these shifts. So now is it the execution piece that obviously bleeds back into the way that you speak to yourself, and so then you're proving to yourself that you are becoming that person, or what would be that next natural progression for somebody to continue to improve upon this, I guess is my question.
yeah. So what I do is I identify like the top 3 or 4, sometimes 5 negative self-talks or beliefs about themselves. It could be I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, I never get anything right. And what I do is I kind of just say like, okay, those are themes for you. You say that repeatedly. You speak that over yourself. Great. These are tells for you that you are functioning out of that negativity bias, or sometimes the wounds that you had in childhood growing up. And so at a bare minimum, we need to just identify that is an indication that you were in that spot that is unhealthy, period. Okay. Those aren't appropriate responses. That's unhelpful. So I have to first be mindful that I'm using certain phrases. Very first step. Okay. The second is that I actually have to create a response to those phrases. So if my daughter, if my friend, if my husband said this about himself or herself, what would I say in reaction? Have it ready. I'm never good enough. Okay. And oftentimes my response to that is, as a therapist, what do you like that you did?
Mm.
What are you proud of? If we can't identify it, I'm going to work with you like nobody's business to get to that small success you got. And sometimes it's a character thing. Sometimes it's not an action thing. Sometimes I show up at the gym and I didn't give a great job, but my character showed up. Man, I really love the fact that I showed up today. I didn't do everything
Even
I
when I
wanted.
didn't want to show up, I still showed up. Yep.
Yes, I'm resilient, or I live with integrity. And sometimes that is the win. And that's a big win in my book.
It's a huge one. It's a
Because
huge
character is going to outweigh behaviors every single time. We're going to get to where we need to go for living with integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. And then I have to repeat this over and over and over again. So it's not just when I feel like it. It's not just once a week when I'm thinking about it. It's not just when I'm in front of my therapist that I'm going to do it. I have to go home and practice these things. And what I'll tell people is that it's not every single time that you have to nail it. It's only when you're mindful that you're doing it. So if you're on autopilot and you're just saying it to yourself and you're like, oh, I did it again. It's 5 minutes later. It's 10 minutes later. It's later on that afternoon. Great. Correct it in that moment. If you missed it completely for like a day or two, you had no power to change it because you were missing it. That's okay. You don't have to beat yourself up over that. All we have to do is when you come to, when you realize you're in that space doing it again, that's when we have it.
Yep. I think I lived, I don't know how many years of my life in the fake it until you make it mentality. I did not believe I could do things. And, like I said, the belief came after the evidence for me. And I do think that there is power in that concept, right? You're not going to always believe that you can execute the goal. You're not going to always believe that you can do the thing, but you still show up as if you are that person. You still, I know this is something that Jules works with a lot of her clients. I know Anne, you work directly with Jules, but it's a different mentality when she works with competitors, but it's still the same mentality for lifestyle clients. It's like, I need you thinking as if you are that person. And so a lot of times, specifically when she's working with competitors, these walls come up and it's like, what would an athlete do? Right? Like, how would an athlete perform? How would an athlete think? And this can still be shifted and adopted within, okay, what would the person who's 50 pounds lighter do? Like, if the goal is to lose 50 pounds, what would that person do? And you have to start to adopt that persona and that personality and that mentality of, you really are rewiring, and new you is going to cost you old you. And I know that that is a saying that might be slightly overused, but there is so much validity there. Like, the skin that I had to shed to become the person I am today is quite literally, like, version 2.0 of Nicole is completely different than version 1.0 of Nicole. And a lot of the times I lived in this, I didn't always believe I could do it. A lot of times I was just flying and winging it, but it was just like I lived within the mentality that this is the person that I am becoming. These are the things I am going to accomplish. And so I may not be there yet. I was living as if I was that person. And I see you shaking your head. So
Yeah, it reminded me of the story of running, which there was a podcast where we talked about this and just how much I hated running. But I remember saying for years, "Am I a runner yet?" And I was doing races and half marathons and tough mudders and all these things, and I kept saying, like, and like, oh, but a real runner enjoys it. A real runner does it under this time frame. A real runner goes out and is like can run at a moment's notice and wants to. And what that I think that took from me is a lot of enjoyment around running. Of course, maybe that's one of the reasons why I didn't enjoy it, right? But I we speak that over ourselves repeatedly over and over and over again, questioning whether or not we can do something and whether or not we are something. Like, if you're doing it, you are it. If you like, we may not be at the end of the journey, but you're developing those habits and being able to see that in the future, being able to have hope that that's where you can be. That hope, even if it's like 1-2%, that's going to be like, we're just trying to milk it for all it's worth. That's all we're trying to do is go, okay, I believe that at a bare minimum, I'm on a program or have a strategy to get to where it is that I want to be.
Mm.
And just side note disclaimer, if it's a diet, just stop. Yeah, that's not the way. I just please don't do that. I just please for the
She's
sake of
interjecting in there.
for the sake of all that's good, please don't follow some big diet trend and then assume that that's going to get you to where you need to be. Um,
So let's talk about that. Let's dive into that then, because I think that that's powerful. This might be another podcast for another day, but just slightly like, what would somebody, how would they differentiate well, keto? I'm just like that. Like a lot of people, like we can take, I always say a diet that has a name on it, but how would people differentiate that, right? I know for a lot of people, they live their lives in the diet. So they really truly don't know any different.
yeah, oh yeah.
And so what would be the way of which you differentiate that for somebody?
Um, okay. If you have foods that you love, and this is one of the questions for when I do an intake with somebody that has food addiction, this is one of the questions that I ask them. Are you restricting foods? And they're like, no, I'll eat anything. And I'm not talking about when you binge. I just mean like, when you're overeating, what, are there foods that you specifically try to avoid? And they'll go through a list of foods, right? And these are from people of various weights, but usually they're overweight. And one of the reasons that is like one of the first questions I ask when it comes to food addiction is because it's our ability to make peace with those foods that matter. And I hear so many people that fight me on this all the time, where they're like, I gave it up for 5 years and never felt better and didn't have any food cravings and life is good. And I'm like, but it didn't pan out well because you were only able to do it for 5 years. And then they'll go, well, willpower was because I made a bad decision and now I just need to get back on track. But it's been 3 years now and you didn't get back on track. So we've got to learn how to have peace with certain foods. And initially that might look like giving up those foods for a very short time frame. But the end goal needs to be that I have to be able to come back to those foods and consume them eventually so that I don't keep this pattern going. Because if you're living your entire life, the carnivore diet is one of the new fads that I've seen that just looks unpleasant.
What diet? Sorry.
Carnivore diet.
Oh, carnivore. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're just like eating lots of meat and sticks of butter, and I love them. So don't get me wrong with that. I like meat too. That is no problem with that. But the issue is that if I'm eliminating so many foods out of my diet that I genuinely enjoy, then I'm going to continue to struggle with this as a lifestyle. And that's what we're trying to get. So weight management is a lifestyle. A skinny person isn't on repeated diets. A skinny person learns how to manage food. They leave food on their plate when they're full. They eat the dessert. They sometimes don't eat the dessert. They'll have a latte, but get a small and maybe only finish half, right? And when we're foodies, the problem is that we're hanging on to food like it's the highlight of our universe and the highlight of our day. And if I eat this, I'm going to overconsume it. I hear people all the time say this and speak that like, well, every single time I eat it, I binge on it, or every single time I eat that, I can't stop. The second I heard it just today. I was like, once I eat a chip, I'm going to eat the whole stinking bag. It doesn't matter how big the bag is. Okay, I hear you. But we've got to make peace with those chips because you love it. So we have to figure out a strategy eventually to bring that food back in so that you can eat it and walk away from it and feel satisfied and feel proud of yourself. That is one of the greatest flex in life when it comes to
Just being in complete and total control.
that's right.
Absolutely, right? Like if you want to eat the food, you understand that you can have a serving of it and it's great because if you want a serving of it tomorrow, it'll be there tomorrow and there's no need to over consume because you don't know when you're going to allow yourself to eat the food again, which, the restriction, we've talked about this, you guys, leads to the binge every single time. And so I always say if your quote unquote diet doesn't allow you to have certain things, or you have to put in a cheat day, or you have to, there's any sort of framework in and around good food versus bad food, then that's when you're in a place where food still controls you. Now, don't get me wrong, you guys. Are there foods that, I have viewpoints in around food? Okay, that's a more nutritious food that I eat more often, and this is a less nutritious food, and I may not enjoy it as much. But if I want to enjoy it, I understand how to fit that within my day. Does that mean I eat it every single day? No. But I also don't have the desire to eat it every single day because I eat more nutritious foods and I don't have the need for the less nutritious foods. And so that's just that is the framework in and around nutrition that I truly want for every single person, because I've been on the opposite end of that. And I know, Anne, you have too. I've been on the end where food completely consumes me. It consumes
Yep.
my every thought, waking action. And on both ends, I've been on the end of being 100 plus pounds overweight, where I'm eating breakfast, already thinking what I'm gonna have for lunch and fear of
Yes.
missing out on this. And I've been on the ripped and shredded end where I'm a miserable shell of a human being and doing whatever I possibly can to keep myself not like thinking about food and going to bed earlier because I'm hungry. And so if I go to bed, then the hunger goes away. I've been on both ends, you guys, both ends to the extreme. And so it's that gray area that I truly want for every single person, because it doesn't have to be black and it doesn't have to be white. Now, that's not to say when you have goals that things have to be locked and loaded, and there isn't an area of, hitting your macros and understanding that you need to be in a calorie deficit, and that there is I don't want to say a form of restriction, but there are going to be times where you have to say no to the donut. And that's because you have goals and that donut doesn't align with the goals. But you're not saying no to the donut because the donut's bad or the donut makes you less worthy or you don't deserve. You're saying no to the donut because you're simply saying my goals mean more to me than the donut
Yes.
means to me right now.
Or you can't control yourself around the donut, because when we speak that out loud, and I hear people say this all the time, I just can't control myself around donuts, or I just, every single time I have it, I haven't figured out yet how to have it, and I really struggle with portion control. Boy, that's a big sentence, right? Like, I struggle with portion control. I haven't figured out yet how to have it.
That shift.
Versus
Yeah.
I can't have it. I always binge on it. Okay, but you didn't initially when you were introduced to donuts, probably as a little kid, you weren't binging on it. You had a donut, you walked away. Like, you have a capacity, and you had a capacity at some point, and we lost it. That's now a learned behavior we can unlearn.
Mm.
And I hear people equate it to alcohol addiction all the time. It is not the same thing because of what alcohol as a chemical does to us. Yes, sugar can be addictive, but the addiction threshold is pretty significantly small. And I've also ironically seen people who have engaged in alcohol abuse learn how to have a better relationship with alcohol. It's just when we're in high levels of alcohol dependence, it's really hard.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And it's because it's a central nervous system depressant. So it lowers our impulse threshold. So we become more impulsive the more we drink, right? So versus eating like food, yeah, you can have sugar and you say, well, then I just want to eat more if I have it, but it's not actually chemically lowering.
Mm. Mm.
You just want more.
That's powerful. That's powerful. All right, you guys. So solid actionable takeaways from this podcast are going to be identifying the self-talk and, really owning the self-talk of like, this obviously clearly isn't, you know what I mean, in and around how I want to perceive myself in alignment with the person that I am becoming. So identifying that self-talk and then reframing it to something that feels, again, like I love that analogy that you gave, Anne, if it's like, okay, I can't eat the donut because I'm addicted to sugar. It's like, well, no, I'm not, I'm the person who hasn't quite figured out portion control just yet. Right. So just those small reframes there can be extremely powerful. And I love that you said, it is the repetitiveness of how many times would you tell somebody they have to say and talk to themselves a day to be able to start to adopt this mentality? Like, is there scientific research that says if you say something X times a day, because I know to create a habit or a pattern, what is it, 20 some odd days or of before it becomes a habit? Is it the same thing mentality wise?
Yeah, so we have to consistently do something for at least 20 to 30 days for actually to create habit formation, just the wiring in the brain. And so it's really the skin of the game that we have is the consistent daily work on it. The consistent, at least once a day, we've got to be able to reframe that, but as many times as you can see, being able to hit it, being able to kind of say the correct thing. And again, you don't have to be perfect about it. We just have to keep showing up to do it. Now, one of the challenges with our thought life that doesn't exist in our behavioral lives is that many of us have been hearing these messages our entire lives. And so by the time people show up in my office and they're in their 40s or 50s or sometimes 60s, we have spent 40, 50, 60 years believing that this is the way that I should be talking to myself to motivate myself to be better, to just cope with life. And so the reason I say that is that this piece is a harder piece because we also have to have the action, the behaviors that align with it, and that becomes really discouraging when we're like, well, I haven't figured out how to have a donut yet. And then you go and you have a donut and you're like, see, can't do it.
Do it.
And Yeah. And so it's again, that's that negativity bias. Like I promise you, it can be done. You just have to have a strategy involved. Anything can be done with a strategy involved. You are only limited by the strategies that you have and the way that you talk to yourself.
Yep, 1000%. And of course, if you're looking for additional support to be able to work through and master these skill sets, this is what we do exceptionally well on Team Becoming Her. And Anne is available. She hosts a call monthly for our team specifically, is available in between for any additional support that's needed. But hopefully, you guys, this podcast is something that resonates and you found value to. And if anything, you just become more mindful of. Just because, again, I know a lot of times for these thoughts and whatnot that again they're so self-conscious that you're not even realizing that you're speaking to yourself in the way of which that you are. So just becoming more mindful is going to be the first step there, and then reframing and continuing to, whether it be every single morning that you wake up, every single time you look in the mirror, whatever that looks like for you, of reframing and repeating these things to yourself over and over and over again, and your brain will find ways to make that true. It will live up to the identity of which you have given yourself. That I can promise you. So anything to close this podcast out with, Anne?
Just speak it over yourself. Speak that positive stuff over it. Keep doing it.
Yes, 1000%. And as always, you guys, if I find value to the podcast, liking, sharing, leaving a review, tagging us on your social media is very much so appreciated. But we will see you guys in the next episode. Ciao.
If this is helpful, give me a like, follow me, or subscribe for more.